Chapter 6, The Schism. The journey back to the surface was tense with unspoken conflict. Elena could feel the weight of Marduk's fury like a physical presence, while Enlil's supporters seemed energized by humanity's choice. The ancient schism in Anunnaki society had been reopened, and Elena feared that her crew might have inadvertently triggered a civil war. What happens now? Commander Mitchell asked as they emerged into the strange twilight of Nibiru's surface. Now we prepare for what comes next, Enlil replied grimly. Marduk will not accept the mirror's judgment. He has been planning for this moment for millennia. As if to underscore his words, a low rumble echoed across the landscape. In the distance, Elena could see structures rising from the ground, metallic spires that gleamed with ominous purpose. Weapons platforms, Dr. Santos observed, his engineers' eye recognizing the threat immediately. They're preparing for war. Enlil nodded sadly. My brother has spent the long centuries of our exile building an army. He believed that humanity would eventually reach us, and he is prepared for that day. An army of what? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Constructs. Artificial beings bred for warfare, enhanced with technology that makes them far more dangerous than any natural creature. Dr. Petrov was scanning the horizon with his geological equipment. I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the continent. Whatever they're powering up, it's on a scale beyond anything we've ever seen. Commander Mitchell turned to Enlil. What are our options? Few, I'm afraid. Marduk commands the loyalty of roughly half our population, and his military preparations give him a significant advantage. My followers are philosophers and scientists, not warriors. What about us? Elena asked. What can humanity do to help? Enlil's expression was thoughtful. The Prometheus is small, but it represents technologies we have not seen before. Your fusion drive, your materials science, your computational systems, they follow different principles than ours. That could provide advantages we haven't considered. Dr. Santos was already thinking like an engineer. If we could interface our systems with yours, combine our technologies. The question is whether we have time, Commander Mitchell interrupted. How long before Marduk makes his move? As if in answer to her question, the sky above them began to change. Clouds gathered with unnatural speed, swirling into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Lightning crackled between them, but the flashes were wrong somehow, too bright, too colorful, as if reality itself was being torn. He's opening a dimensional rift, Enlil said, his calm demeanor finally cracking. Marduk is bringing his army through from their staging ground in fold space. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. How big an army? Large enough to conquer your entire world. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. This wasn't just about humanity's relationship with the Anunnaki anymore. If Marduk succeeded here, if he gained control of Nibiru's resources and technology, Earth would be defenseless against his eventual return. We need to get back to the ship, Commander Mitchell ordered. If we're going to fight, we need our full capabilities. They ran across the crystalline plains as the sky continued to tear itself apart above them. Behind them, Elena could hear the sound of something massive moving through the dimensional rift, the grinding of metal, the hum of alien engines, the rhythmic thunder of marching feet. The Prometheus looked small and vulnerable sitting on the landing field, but Elena had never been so relieved to see anything in her life. They sealed themselves inside as the first of Marduk's forces emerged from the rift, creatures that might once have been Anunnaki but had been transformed into something else entirely. My God, Dr. Hassan whispered, staring at the view screen. What are those things? The beings pouring out of the dimensional rift were twice the size of natural Anunnaki, their golden skin replaced with metallic armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. Their eyes glowed with artificial light, and their movements had the precise, inhuman coordination of machines. Cyborg warriors, Dr. Santos observed. They've merged biology with technology on a scale we've never imagined. Elena counted the emerging forces with growing despair. Hundreds of the enhanced warriors, massive vehicles that floated above the ground on unknown principles, weapons that crackled with energy she couldn't identify. Humanity's most advanced warship wouldn't last 5 minutes against a force like this. Enlil, Commander Mitchell spoke into the communicator, we need options. Our ship can't stand against that army. Enlil's voice crackled back through static interference. There may be a way. The Hall of Echoes contains more than just the Mirror of Souls. Our ancestors sealed away technologies too dangerous for common use, weapons that could shatter worlds, defenses that could turn star systems into fortresses. Can you access them? Not alone. The seals require multiple genetic keys, and Marduk's supporters control half of them. But there is another way, if beings of sufficient genetic diversity could provide alternative authorization. Elena understood immediately. You need us. Humans carry genetic traces from Earth's entire biosphere. We might have enough diversity to trigger the ancient locks. The risk is enormous, Enlil warned. These are technologies that could destroy us all if improperly handled. Elena looked at her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They had come this far, traveled across the galaxy to reach this moment. They wouldn't back down now. Commander, she said quietly, I recommend we take the risk. Mitchell nodded grimly. Agreed. Enlil, guide us to the Hall of Echoes. As the Prometheus lifted off, Elena watched Marduk's forces spreading across the landscape below. Whatever technology lay hidden in the Hall of Echoes, they would need it soon. The future of two worlds, perhaps two civilizations, hung in the balance. The flight to the Hall of Echoes took them through a nightmare landscape. Marduk's army had begun transforming the surface of Nibiru, turning the crystalline plains into a military staging ground. Weapons platforms rose like metallic flowers, their surfaces crackling with destructive potential. They're not just preparing to defend Nibiru, Dr. Petrov observed, studying the tactical displays. This is an invasion force. Elena felt sick as the implications became clear. Earth. They're preparing to invade Earth. Commander Mitchell's jaw was set with determination. Not if we stop them here. The entrance to the Hall of Echoes had been sealed with barriers of pure energy, but Enlil's codes opened them as the Prometheus descended into the depths of Nibiru. Elena marveled at the technology that could carve such vast spaces from solid rock, creating chambers that seemed to exist outside normal space-time. They landed in a cavern that stretched beyond the reach of their lights, its walls lined with structures that hummed with dormant power. Ancient Anunnaki script flowed across every surface, changing and shifting as they watched. The sealed archive, Enlil explained as he met them at the airlock. Here lie the technologies our people developed in their youth, before we learned the wisdom of restraint. Elena followed him deeper into the complex, her scientific mind reeling at the implications of what she was seeing. These weren't just weapons or tools, they were technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level, bend space and time to their users, will even reach across dimensions to touch distant realities. This is incredible, Dr. Santos breathed, his scanners going wild as they tried to analyze the alien technologies. The materials science alone could revolutionize our entire civilization. If we survive to use it, Commander Mitchell reminded them grimly. They reached the inner sanctum, a chamber dominated by a crystalline matrix that stretched from floor to ceiling. Within its faceted structure, Elena could see shapes that might have been weapons, vehicles, or something else entirely. The genetic locks, Enlil explained, indicating 6 alcoves surrounding the central matrix. Place your hands within, and the archive will scan your DNA patterns. If you carry sufficient diversity, the seals will open. Elena was the first to step forward, pressing her palms against the cool crystal surface of the nearest alcove. Immediately, she felt a tingling sensation as unknown energies probed her genetic structure, reading the history written in her DNA. One by one, her crewmates followed suit. Dr. Hassan's heritage traced back to the cradle of human civilization in Africa. Dr. Petrov carried the genes of the Eurasian steppes. Dr. Li Wei's ancestry reached deep into the Pacific Islands, while Dr. Santos represented the mixing of indigenous and colonial populations in South America. Commander Mitchell's genes told the story of Northern European expansion and adaptation. Together, they represented the full spectrum of human genetic diversity, the story of their species' journey across Earth and adaptation to every environment their planet offered. The matrix pulsed with increasing brightness as it processed their genetic information. Ancient mechanisms awakened, and the sealed technologies began to emerge from their crystalline prison. "It's working," Enlil said, wonder in his voice. "The archive recognizes you as inheritors. Your species carries the diversity of an entire world's evolution." But even as the weapons and technologies of the ancient Anunnaki revealed themselves, Elena felt a growing sense of unease. These were tools of unimaginable power, capable of shaping the fate of civilizations. In the wrong hands, they could destroy entire star systems. "Enlil," she said quietly, "are we doing the right thing?" The ancient being looked at her with understanding in his timeless eyes. "That, my dear Elena, is exactly the question your species must answer. Power without wisdom is destruction. Wisdom without power is helplessness. The balance between them, that is the test every civilization must face." Elena nodded, her resolve strengthening. They would use these weapons not to conquer or dominate, but to protect the right of all species to choose their own destiny among the stars. The first device to emerge from the Matrix was something Enlil called a reality anchor, a tool that could stabilize space-time and prevent dimensional manipulation. "This will stop Marduk from bringing more forces through his rifts," Enlil explained. "But we must activate it at the source of his dimensional breach." Commander Mitchell studied the tactical situation. "That means getting past his entire army." Elena looked at the other technologies emerging from the archive, devices that could bend light around objects, making them invisible, generators that could create temporary gravity wells, weapons that could disrupt the molecular bonds of any material. "Maybe we don't have to fight through them," she said slowly. "Maybe we can go around them." Chapter 7, The Battle for Two Worlds. The plan was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Using a combination of Anunnaki stealth technology and human tactics, they would infiltrate Marduk's staging area and activate the reality anchor at the heart of his dimensional rift. If they succeeded, his army would be cut off from their reinforcements. If they failed, both Earth and Nibiru would fall under his dominion. Elena found herself equipped with technologies that would have been pure science fiction just days ago. The stealth field generator was a crystalline device no larger than her palm, but it could bend light and sensor waves around her body, making her effectively invisible. The molecular disruptor looked deceptively like a human tablet, but it could reduce any material to its component atoms with a touch. "Remember," Enlil warned as they prepared for the mission, "these technologies are keyed to your genetic signatures now, but they are still dangerous beyond measure. Use them wisely, and only as necessary." Commander Mitchell had divided the team into two groups. She would lead Dr. Santos and Dr. Petrov on a direct assault against the Dimensional Rift's control center, while Elena, Dr. Li Wei, and Dr. Hassan would use the stealth technology to infiltrate Marduk's command structure and activate the reality anchor from within. The Prometheus lifted off in the pre-dawn darkness of Nibiru, its hull shimmering with adaptive camouflage that made it nearly invisible against the star-filled sky. Below them, Marduk's army had transformed the crystalline plains into a fortress of metal and energy, bristling with weapons that could shatter moons. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the dimensional rift," Dr. Santos reported from the engineering station. "Whatever he's bringing through, it's big." Elena felt her heart skip as she saw the latest emergence from the rift, a structure the size of a city, covered in weapon emplacements and crackling with malevolent energy. It was a battle fortress, designed for planetary conquest. "That's not just a military base," Dr. Petrov observed grimly. "It's a world killer." Enlil's voice came through their communicators, heavy with ancient grief. "The Devastator. I had hoped Marduk would never complete its construction. That single vessel could sterilize your entire world in a matter of hours." Elena closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of cities full of people going about their daily lives, unaware that their fate was being decided millions of miles away. "Then we stop it here," she said quietly. The insertion was harrowing. Elena and her team had to drop from the Prometheus while it was still miles above the surface, using modified parachutes that would disperse their heat signatures and make them invisible to sensors. The stealth field generators activated automatically as they fell, bending light around their forms until they were nothing more than shadows against the alien sky. Elena hit the ground hard, her enhanced suit absorbing most of the impact. Around her, the transformed landscape of Nibiru stretched in all directions, a nightmare of twisted metal and crackling energy that hurt to look at directly. "Sound off," she whispered into her communicator. "Li Wei here. I'm about 200 meters from the target coordinates. Hassan reporting. I can see the command structure from here. It's enormous." Elena made her way carefully across the transformed terrain, avoiding the patrols of cyborg warriors that marched with mechanical precision between the weapon emplacements. The stealth field made her invisible, but she could still be detected by sound or touch. The command structure was indeed enormous, a spiraling tower that reached toward the torn sky, its surface covered with viewing screens and control interfaces. At its base, the dimensional rift writhed like a wound in reality, spewing forth more of Marduk's forces with each passing moment. Elena found the others at their designated rally point, a depression in the crystalline ground that provided minimal cover from the patrols. "Status report," she whispered. Dr. Hassan consulted her scanner. "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the structure. The reality anchor will need to be placed at the exact center of the dimensional matrix to be effective." Dr. Li Wei had been monitoring Anunnaki communications. "I'm picking up transmissions between Marduk and his forces. They're preparing for the final phase of the invasion. The Devastator will be through the rift within the hour." Elena felt time slipping away like sand through her fingers. Once that massive battle station completed its transit, nothing would be able to stop it from reaching Earth. "We go in now," she decided. "Li Wei, you're our communication specialist. Stay here and coordinate with Commander Mitchell's team. Hassan, you're with me. We're going to the heart of that command structure." The infiltration was like moving through a nightmare. The command tower was filled with corridors that defied geometry, stairs that led up and down simultaneously, chambers where gravity seemed optional. Elena began to understand that this wasn't just advanced technology, it was reality manipulation on a scale that challenged her understanding of physics. Dr. Hassan pointed her scanner at the walls. "These readings don't make sense. It's as if space itself is folded inside this structure." Dimensional engineering, Elena realized. They're not just building in 3 dimensions. They're using higher dimensional space to create impossible architectures. They climbed, or thought they climbed, through the twisting passages of the command tower. Elena's stealth field kept them invisible, but she could feel the presence of Marduk's forces all around them, beings of such power that they warped spacetime with their very existence. Finally, they reached what could only be the command chamber. The room was vast beyond measure, its ceiling lost in dimensional folds that stretched into impossible distances. At its center, Marduk himself stood before a control matrix that seemed to be built from crystallized light and flowing metal. He was magnificent and terrible, his form enhanced with technologies that made him more than Anunnaki, more than any single being should be. Energy coursed through conduits implanted in his golden skin, and his eyes blazed with the light of artificial stars. "The dimensional transit is at 90% completion," one of his subordinates reported. "The Devastator will be fully operational within minutes." Marduk nodded, his attention focused on displays showing Earth from orbit. And the human homeworld remains unaware of their approaching judgment. How fitting. Elena felt a cold rage building in her chest. This being, this self-proclaimed god, was planning to destroy her world and everyone on it. She activated the reality anchor, feeling its crystalline structure warm in her hands as ancient energies began to build. But as she moved toward the dimensional matrix, Marduk's head turned in her direction. His enhanced senses had detected something, even through her stealth field. "Interesting," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "It seems we have visitors." Elena's stealth field failed as Marduk's will focused on her location. She found herself visible and vulnerable in the heart of the enemy's stronghold, with the fate of 2 worlds hanging in the balance. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Marduk said, his tone almost conversational. The little xenobiologist who thinks she can stand against the natural order of creation. How quaint. Elena raised the reality anchor, its surface blazing with contained power. The only natural order is the right of every species to choose its own path. Marduk laughed, and the sound shattered crystal formations throughout the chamber. Choice? You speak of choice to beings who created you. Your species exists because we willed it. Your planet flourishes because we allowed it. And now, you will submit because we command it. No, Elena said simply, and activated the reality anchor. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The dimensional rift began to collapse, its edges pulling back like a closing wound. The Devastator, caught in the middle of its transit, was torn apart by conflicting forces as the portal tried to snap shut around it. Marduk's roar of rage shook the foundations of the command tower. You dare! You dare interfere with powers beyond your comprehension. But even as the dimensional rift collapsed, Elena realized they had only won a temporary victory. The forces Marduk had already brought through were more than enough to overwhelm Enlil's followers and then proceed to Earth. The real battle was about to begin. Chapter 8, Gods and Mortals. The collapse of the dimensional rift sent shockwaves through Marduk's command structure, but the ancient Anunnaki was far from defeated. As the crystalline walls of the tower cracked and energy discharges arced through the air, Elena found herself face to face with a being whose power dwarfed anything humanity had ever encountered. You have destroyed my greatest weapon, Marduk said, his voice carrying both fury and grudging respect. But you have also trapped yourself here with me. Was this exchange truly worth your pathetic life? Elena backed away, the molecular disruptor clutched in her hands. If it saves Earth, yes. Dr. Hassan had taken cover behind a twisted pillar of metal and crystal, her medical scanner going wild as it tried to analyze the energy patterns surrounding Marduk. Elena, she whispered through the communicator, his bio-readings are off the charts. He's not just enhanced, he's become something else entirely. Marduk raised one hand, and Elena felt an invisible force slam into her, lifting her off the ground and slamming her against the chamber's wall. The molecular disruptor flew from her grasp, clattering across the floor. Your technology is impressive for such a primitive species, Marduk observed, advancing toward her with measured steps. But you are still children playing with toys beyond your understanding. Elena struggled to breathe, feeling the alien force crushing her against the wall. Through the chamber's twisted windows, she could see the battle raging outside. Commander Mitchell's team had launched their assault on the weapon platforms, the Prometheus dancing through the air as it engaged targets too numerous to count. Your friends are doomed, Marduk continued conversationally. Even without the Devastator, my forces are more than sufficient to cleanse this system of resistance. And afterward, we will proceed to your birth world and restore the proper order of things. Elena gasped for air, her vision starting to blur. But through the haze of oxygen deprivation, she saw Dr. Hassan moving carefully along the chamber's edge, approaching the dimensional matrix from another angle. You're wrong, Elena managed to say. Humanity isn't that easy to break. Marduk's eyes blazed brighter. We shall see. But before he could tighten his grip further, Dr. Hassan struck. The medical officer had repurposed her bioscanner into a focused electromagnetic pulse generator, sending a surge of energy directly into the neural implants that enhanced Marduk's power. The ancient Anunnaki screamed, his control faltering as pain overloaded his enhanced nervous system. Elena dropped to the floor, gasping for breath as circulation returned to her limbs. Impossible. Marduk staggered, his perfect coordination disrupted by the feedback surge. How did you know? Medical training, Dr. Hassan replied grimly, already preparing another pulse. Enhanced or not, you still have a nervous system. And nervous systems can be disrupted. Elena retrieved the molecular disruptor, her hands shaking as she aimed it at the dimensional matrix. If she could destroy the control system entirely, Marduk's remaining forces would be cut off from their command structure. But Marduk recovered faster than she had hoped. With a gesture, he sent Dr. Hassan flying across the chamber, her body striking the wall with a sickening crack. Amira! Elena screamed, torn between helping her friend and completing the mission. Finish it! Dr. Hassan gasped, blood trickling from her mouth. Don't let him reach Earth. Elena turned back to the dimensional matrix, her finger hovering over the molecular disruptor's activation control. But Marduk was already moving, crossing the chamber with inhuman speed. She fired. The beam struck the dimensional matrix dead center, and the ancient technology began to dissolve at the molecular level. Control systems that had coordinated the movement of armies across dimensional space crumbled into their component atoms. Marduk's howl of rage shook the foundations of the tower, but it was too late. Without the matrix, his forces would be operating blind, their coordination shattered. Elena ran to Dr. Hassan, cradling her friend's head as blood pooled beneath them. Amira, stay with me. Did we stop him? Hassan's voice was barely a whisper. Elena looked up at Marduk, expecting to see him preparing for another attack. Instead, she found him standing motionless before the dissolving remains of his command matrix, his expression unreadable. You have won this battle, he said finally, his voice carrying centuries of weariness. But you have also doomed both our species to a conflict that will span the galaxy. It doesn't have to be that way, Elena replied. There's another choice. Cooperation instead of domination. Marduk turned to look at her, and for a moment, she saw not a god or a tyrant, but a being who had carried the weight of his people's survival for millennia. You believe your species will choose wisdom over power when faced with the technologies we possess? He asked. Elena thought of her crewmates, fighting desperately outside to protect two worlds from destruction. She thought of the scientists back on Earth, working to heal their planet's wounds. She thought of the billions of ordinary people who chose every day to help rather than harm, to build rather than destroy. I believe we'll try, she said quietly. And that's more than you're willing to give us credit for. Marduk was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh, not the terrible sound that had shattered crystal before, but something almost human. Perhaps, he said. Perhaps there is wisdom in your foolishness after all. Epilogue, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching as two very different ships worked together to construct something unprecedented in galactic history, a joint research station where humans and Anunnaki could study the universe as equals. The battle for Nibiru had ended not with total victory or defeat, but with something rarer, understanding. Marduk's forces had surrendered when their leader called for an end to hostilities, choosing exile over continued conflict. Enlil's followers had welcomed the opportunity to work with humanity, sharing technologies and knowledge that would benefit both species. Dr. Hassan had recovered from her injuries, though she would carry the scars forever. Commander Mitchell had been promoted to head of the new Joint Exploration Initiative. Dr. Li Wei was working with Anunnaki linguists to develop communication protocols for contact with other species they might encounter among the stars. And Elena was doing what she had always dreamed of. She was studying life in all its myriad forms, not just on Earth or Nibiru, but on worlds scattered across the galaxy that the Anunnaki had visited in their long journey between the stars. Regrets? Enlil asked, joining her at the observation window. Elena considered the question seriously. They had changed the course of galactic history, shattered ancient patterns of dominance and submission. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities in equal measure. No, she said finally. We chose our path. Now we have to walk it. Through the viewport, she could see Earth shining like a blue jewel in the distance. Humanity's homeworld was changing, adapting to new realities as clean Anunnaki technologies began to heal decades of environmental damage. There were problems, certainly, religious upheaval as humanity grappled with proof that ancient gods were real, political tensions as nations competed for access to alien knowledge, social disruption as traditional power structures were challenged by new possibilities. But there were also wonders. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were being eliminated. Clean energy was ending humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. And perhaps most importantly, humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Your species has a proverb, Enlil observed. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Elena nodded. What journey are we beginning? And Lil gestured toward the star-filled void beyond the viewport. The greatest journey of all. The quest to understand our place in the cosmic community, to learn from species we have yet to meet, to grow beyond the limitations of our origins. Elena smiled, thinking of the report she would send back to Earth, a document that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. They were not the chosen children of ancient gods, nor were they the universe's only intelligent species. They were simply one part of a vast, complex community of consciousness that stretched across the galaxy. It was, she reflected, a much more interesting place to be. As the joint research station took shape before them, its hybrid architecture blending human engineering with Anunnaki aesthetics, Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what exploration was truly about, not conquest or domination, but the endless quest to understand and be understood. The universe was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. And humanity, working alongside its oldest and newest allies, was finally ready to take its place among the stars. In her personal log that night, Elena wrote, "We came to Nibiru seeking answers to ancient mysteries. We found something far more valuable, a future where humanity stands not as servants or masters, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all. The stars are calling, and finally, we are ready to answer." Outside her cabin's viewport, the combined fleets of two species moved among the stars, carrying the hopes and dreams of both worlds toward whatever wonders awaited them in the infinite dark. The age of isolation was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. And in the ancient halls of Nibiru, the mirror of souls pulsed with quiet satisfaction, having witnessed the first steps of a partnership that would reshape the galaxy for millennia to come. The story of humanity's journey to the stars had begun with a single discovery, the realization that they were not alone. It would continue with the choices they made in the face of that revelation. And if Elena's faith in her species proved justified, it would be a story worth telling to the civilizations they had yet to meet among the infinite wonders of the cosmos.